FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
In 1961, the American Medical Association put together a public relations campaign to oppose legislation that would have required the federal government to pay for medical care for all those eligible to receive Social Security. In those days, note, the AMA was against it. One of the AMA's measures to distribute an album, an LP, remember those? Things like this that we put on objects called record players, called Ronald Reagan Speaks Out Against Socialized Medicine. No video this time, just audio.
One of the traditional methods of imposing statism or socialism on a people has been by way of medicine. The doctor begins to lose freedoms. It's like telling a lie, and one leads to another. So a doctor decides he wants to practice in one town, and the government has to say to him, you can't live in that town. They already have enough doctors. You have to go someplace else. And from here, it's only a short step to dictating where he will go. All of us can see what happens once you establish the precedent that the government can determine a man's working place and his working methods, determine his employment.
Mark Steyn?
That's a much better LP than Sgt. Pepper. He's right. Everything that people think sounds ridiculous actually happens in countries with government healthcare systems. He's quite right. In the province of Quebec, for example, they tell doctors, no, you can't practice in Montreal. You got to go and practice up in Lac Saint-Jean, a few hours north, because they need a doctor there. He rightly identified, I think, what is at issue here, which is that once the government is responsible for your health care, it licenses the government to regulate every aspect of your life, because everything's to do. What you eat impacts on your health. That's the argument that was made about seatbelts and motorcycle helmets, that if you fall off your motorcycle and you're not wearing a helmet, you'll have to be patched up in hospital at government expense. Therefore, the government has the right to tell you have to wear a helmet. Now we see that in Britain, where they have health inspectors coming around to inspect the contents of your fridge, they've got cameras not just to detect your speed on the highways, but that close in to see whether you're eating a sandwich in your car.
But not what the sandwich is made of, though, right? Not yet.
No, they can't. They can't.
Right.
They can't detect yet whether it's a ham and rye, hold the mustard, but they can detect that it's a sandwich. Because once you've got government healthcare, that gives the government the right to regulate everything else in your life, and he saw that.
Why does no one sound like that anymore?
I think nobody people. First of all, people are embarrassed now. They're sort of more ironic and hip. Ronald Reagan was never embarrassed to be against socialism. I mean, he used the word. Now people say, well, it sounds, if you're a sophisticated, right-thinking person, you want to, at a fancy dinner party, say, well, of course I would never use some rude word like socialism or communism. But it does seem a little big government, was what we say when we're against it. He called it what it was. I mean, just to follow up on what Mark says, when you create a government and a culture that expects the government to take care of all of the big stuff, your health, your education, your housing, then what do you spend your money on? Toys.
Flat screen television.
Yeah, flat screens. You are literally infantilized. Your salary is literally now your allowance. And dad and mom take care of everything else.